flawed and fabulous, embracing imperfection in a perfectionist world. Welcome, fellow humans, to a journey of self discovery that might just change your life. I'm here today to share some mind blowing insights I gained from a recent interview with the extraordinary Aurelia Gardner. Now, before we dive in, let me tell you a bit about Aurelia. She's not just any run of the mill life coach or motivational speaker. No, Aurelia is a force of nature, a beacon of authenticity in a world drowning in Instagram filters and linked in humble brags. She's dedicated her life to helping people embrace their flaws and live authentically. And let me tell you, her impact is nothing short of revolutionary. So buckle up, folks. We're about to embark on a wild ride through the landscape of human imperfection. And I promise you, it's going to be one heck of a journey. Let's start with a question that might make you squirm a little. How many flaws can you name about yourself? One, two, none? If you're struggling, don't worry, you're not alone. But here's the kicker. According to Aurelia, if you can't name at least three of your flaws, you might be part of a bigger problem. Ouch, right? Now, before you start feeling attacked, let me explain. We live in a world that's become allergic to imperfection. We've created a culture with zero tolerance for flawed people. The irony, we're all flawed, every single one of us. Yes, even you, Mr. Perfect Hair never makes a mistake. And you too. Miss always has it together. We're all beautifully, gloriously imperfect. But here's where it gets interesting. Aurelia isn't suggesting we throw a party for our flaws and call it a day. No, she's proposing something far more revolutionary, that we acknowledge our flaws, understand them, and use them as stepping stones to personal growth and authentic living. Let me share a story that Aurelia told me, which perfectly illustrates this point. Picture this: a high achieving woman. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah was the ultimate box checker. From Girl Scout badges to being in the top 10 of her high school class, from choosing a prestigious major to pledging a sorority, and then working for top engineering companies, she did it all. She checked all the boxes that society told her she should. Sounds great, right? A real success story. But here's the plot twist. What happens when there are no more boxes to check? For Sarah, like many overachievers, the answer was burnout. Her world came crashing down around her. She found herself exhausted, struggling with failed relationships, and feeling the weight of everyone's expectations on her shoulders. The turning point came when Sarah realized that as good as her life looked on paper, she hated it. She had spent her whole life building a life that others told her she should have. But without those external validations, who was she really? This story resonates deeply because it's a journey many of us are on, whether we realize it or not. We're all trying to navigate a world that often seems to value perfection over authenticity, achievement over personal growth, and appearance over substance. But what if we flip the script? What if, instead of trying to hide our flaws, we embrace them as part of what makes us uniquely human? What if we gave ourselves and others the grace to be imperfect? Now, I can almost hear some of you thinking, wait a minute, are you saying we should just accept bad behavior or harmful traits? Not at all. What Aurelia and I are advocating for is a shift in perspective. We're not excusing flaws, but rather allowing people their human experience and giving them the tools they need to address their shortcomings. Let's consider another example Aurelia shared. She talked about a time when she was dating someone who called her the strongest person I know and then ghosted her. Now, being called strong might seem like a compliment, but in this context, it was a burden. It was an expectation that she had to live up to, a box she had to check. In a moment of vulnerability, Aurelia found herself sitting in her car, dressed all in black, staking out this person's house like something out of a B-grade detective movie. It was a low point, a moment when the facade of strength crumbled, revealing the very human, very flawed person underneath. But here's the beautiful part. It was in recognizing and accepting this moment of weakness, this flaw in her armor, that Aurelia found strength, real strength, the kind that comes from knowing yourself, accepting yourself, and loving yourself, imperfections and all. This is the kind of strength we should be striving for, not the kind that comes from pretending to be perfect, but the kind that comes from embracing our whole selves, flaws and all. So what does this mean for you? How can you apply these insights to your own life? First, I challenge you to do what Aurelia suggests. Name three of your flaws. Not just surface level things, but real honest assessments of areas where you struggle. This isn't about beating yourself up, but about gaining a clearer picture of who you are. Next, consider how these flaws have shaped you. Have they taught you resilience, empathy, creativity? Often our greatest strengths are born from our struggles with our perceived weaknesses. Then think about how you can use this self-awareness to live more authentically. Are there areas of your life where you're still trying to check boxes that don't really matter to you? Are there expectations you're trying to meet that don't align with your true self? Remember, the goal isn't to become flawless. The goal is to become more fully yourself. To live authentically means embracing all parts of yourself, the good, the bad, and everything in between. This journey towards self-acceptance and authentic living isn't just about personal fulfillment, though that's certainly a worthy goal. It's also about creating a more compassionate, understanding world. When we learn to accept our own flaws, we become more accepting of others' imperfections. We create space for genuine connections, for vulnerability, for growth. Imagine a world where we all gave each other the grace to be human, where we recognize that behind every perfect Instagram post, every professional achievement, every seemingly flawless exterior, there's a person struggling with their own doubts, fears, and insecurities. How much kinder would we be to each other? How much more authentic would our relationships become? This is the world Aurelia Gardner envisions, and it's a vision I wholeheartedly share. It's a world where we don't just tolerate our flaws, but we celebrate them as part of what makes us unique. A world where we understand that our best self isn't our most perfect self, but our most authentic self. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This all sounds great in theory, but how do I actually put it into practice? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me share with you another powerful story from Aurelia's journey. Aurelia told me about a time when she was at the peak of her career, or so it seemed from the outside. She had the prestigious job, the corner office, the impressive salary. She was living the dream. Or was she? One day, sitting in a meeting surrounded by colleagues, all nodding in agreement to some corporate jargon that suddenly seemed meaningless, Aurelia had an epiphany. She realized she had spent years building a life that looked good on paper but felt empty inside. She was playing a role, wearing a mask, and it was suffocating her. In that moment, Aurelia made a decision that would change her life. She decided to embrace her true self, flaws and all. She quit her job, much to the shock of her colleagues and family. She embarked on a journey of self discovery, facing her fears and insecurities head on. Wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when she questioned if she had made the right choice. But slowly, as she peeled away the layers of expectations and societal pressures, she discovered something incredible. She found herself, the real Aurelia, not the polished, perfect version she had been projecting to the world. And you know what? The real Aurelia was messy. She was sometimes insecure. She made mistakes, but she was also passionate, creative, and deeply empathetic. She was human in all its beautiful, flawed glory. This journey led Aurelia to her true calling, helping others embrace their authentic selves. And that's how she ended up here, sharing her wisdom with us. Now, I'm not suggesting you all quit your jobs tomorrow, unless that's what your authentic self is calling you to do. But I am challenging you to take a hard look at your life. Are you living authentically? Are you embracing your flaws, or are you exhausting yourself trying to hide them? Here's a little exercise Aurelia suggests. Take a moment right now to think about something you've always considered a flaw. Maybe it's your tendency to speak before you think, or your struggle with organization, or your fear of public speaking. Now, instead of seeing it as a flaw, try to reframe it as a unique aspect of your personality. That tendency to speak impulsively, maybe it's a sign of your passion and enthusiasm. That disorganization, perhaps it's a byproduct of your creative, nonlinear thinking. That fear of public speaking, it could be an indicator of your deep empathy and sensitivity to others' opinions. The point is, what we often perceive as flaws are often just aspects of our personality that don't fit into the narrow definition of perfect that society has fed us. But here's the kicker: there is no perfect. It's a myth, a mirage that keeps us chasing after something that doesn't exist. So, what if instead of chasing perfection, we chased authenticity? What if instead of trying to fit into a mold, we broke the mold altogether? Aurelia's journey teaches us that true fulfillment doesn't come from external validation or achieving societal benchmarks. It comes from within, from embracing who we truly are and living in alignment with our authentic selves. This doesn't mean we stop growing or improving. On the contrary, when we accept our flaws, we're in a much better position to work on them. We can approach personal growth from a place of self love and acceptance rather than self criticism and shame. And here's another powerful insight from Aurelia. When we embrace our own flaws, we become more accepting of others' imperfections too. We create a ripple effect of authenticity and acceptance that can transform our relationships, our communities, and potentially the world. Imagine a workplace where people felt safe to be their authentic selves, where mistakes were seen as opportunities for growth rather than reasons for shame. Imagine an education system that celebrated diverse ways of thinking and learning rather than trying to fit everyone into the same box. Imagine a society where our differences were seen as strengths, not weaknesses. This is the world Aurelia is working towards. And it's a world I believe we can all help create. It starts with us. It starts with embracing our own flaws and living authentically. So, as we wrap up this talk, I want to leave you with a challenge. Today, I want you to do something that scares you a little. Share one of your flaws with someone you trust. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a therapist. Talk about how this flaw has shaped you, what you've learned from it, and how you're working to grow. This act of vulnerability might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's a powerful step towards living more authentically. It's an invitation for deeper connection, for mutual understanding, and for personal growth. Remember, you are not your achievements. You are not your failures. You are a complex, beautiful, flawed human being on a journey of becoming. Embrace that journey. Embrace your flaws. Embrace your authentic self. In the words of Aurelia Gardner, your only job is enjoying the amazing journey of becoming who you've always been. So let's start that journey today. Let's create a world where we can all be unapologetically ourselves, flaws and all. And here's my final challenge to you. Go out into the world and be gloriously, unabashedly imperfect. Wear your flaws like badges of honor. Let your quirks shine. Be so authentically you that it inspires others to do the same. Because in the end, it's not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about being human. And there's nothing more beautiful, more powerful, more revolutionary than that. So go forth, my beautifully flawed friends. Embrace your imperfections. Live authentically. And remember, in a world that's trying to make you perfect, the most rebellious thing you can do is be unapologetically, wonderfully you. Thank you.